Howdy, team. Happy Thursday and welcome to Fort Lewis. Just FYI, because I'm coming to you from home, it is entirely possible you are going to hear my children issuing their various battle cries. They're having a pretty good time this evening, just wrestling and playing and having fun. So, just giving you a heads up there. Guys, we are looking at probably the most famous passage in all of the New Testament. Looking at John chapter 3. Of course, we're looking at verses 16 through 18. Those are really the most famous passages. And that's a big deal. So don't gloss over this because our students need to hear this and need to be reminded of it. Remember, the reason why we meet every week is not to learn new things. It's to remind each other of the truth of the gospel and ultimately to call each other to obey. And this is an important passage for us to know and believe and obey. So let's jump into it. I really like option 2 because I really like Transformers, but Transformers are not as popular as they used to be. They're not even as popular as they were when this particular lesson was written. And so you're probably better off going with option 1. That'll just lead to probably more fruitful conversations. Unless, of course, you can sing the more than meets the eye. If you can do that, that would be cool. But beyond that, yeah, probably jump into option number 1, talk about Christmas presents and lack of batteries, and I bet you'll get some good laughs out of that. I really like the way this whole thing starts. Do not miss this fact. I really think this is important. Nicodemus wanted to have this meeting with Jesus. He wanted to have it at nighttime. He wanted to have it at his house. He laid out all those circumstances, and Jesus still came. Don't miss that. Jesus is the one that's head over all things, and yes, he was willing to come and meet Nicodemus where he was, in his probably his doubt or his uncertainty. He was curious for sure, but Jesus just went ahead and met him in all those situations. That's a big deal. Don't miss that fact, and I would point that out to the students too. Jesus is willing to meet us where we are. That's very, very cool. I like the question that Jesus asks Nicodemus, where he makes the statement that says, "You're a teacher, and yet you don't understand these things." I wish we could understand tones in the Scripture, both for that statement as well as Nicodemus' statement to Jesus, where he says, "Oh, teacher, we know that you come from God." It's hard to tell in either situation whether, for instance, Nicodemus is trying to butter Jesus up, or if Nicodemus is really being sincere, or in Jesus' case, if Jesus is kind of being sarcastic with Nicodemus here a little bit, and just ultimately getting him to a place where he's humbled, where he can hear, or if he's really just kind of just talking to Nicodemus. I don't know. Again, I wish we could read tones in the Scripture, but both of those questions really are pretty strategic. It was important for Nicodemus to understand that there was something different and special about Jesus, because there was, and there seemed to be other people along with Nicodemus, not necessarily in this meeting, but there were at least a few other Pharisees that were in the same boat. They had their concerns about Jesus, but also they couldn't deny what was going on. By the way, let's Paul Harvey this thing. Don't forget, this is an important fact. Nicodemus is one of the people that was there when Jesus died. And I don't mean like mocking him at the crucifixion. I mean, when Jesus had died, Nicodemus was there pulling his body from the cross and laying him in the tomb. Nicodemus became a believer, a really strategic one. So this night is important. Don't undermine that factor or lose sight of that. That's really important. Again, I point that out to students. The snakes and the judgment there, guys, that's a big deal. Read Numbers chapter 21, specifically like the first 10 or 11 verses. That is important. This is such a good analogy. This is why Jesus brought this up. Remember the story. The Israelites are complaining about food. Ultimately, it's really about the Israelites not trusting God to provide, and so God sends judgment against them. There are these snakes that bit people, and if people did not look at the source of salvation, they died. And the source of salvation was a wooden stick holding up a snake on it, and it would have had to have had another stick on it to hold up the snake. Literally, it was a cross holding up a snake. And the snake is important because the snake was the source of judgment, but it also became the source of salvation. Jesus is the judge of all creation, but he is the source of our salvation too. This is why Jesus points to this. This is a big story. So again, you might take them back to Numbers chapter 21. It feels odd, but when you kind of lay those facts out for them, it makes a lot more sense. And also, it's not about just, hey, look at the snake real fast and you're good. It's an intent gaze. Keep your eyes focused and recognize this, not anything else, is your source of salvation. Just like our faith and our salvation is based solely on Jesus and his work. Guys, my last encouragement to you is just this. Again, because it is such a familiar passage, please, please, please read John 3:16 through really 21, the way the lesson does. Read it slowly. Your kids have heard it 1,000 times. You've heard it 10,000 times. Read it slowly. Let those words minister to your heart in a way that they only can when we give them the time and the respect they deserve. They're powerful, powerful words. Just an FYI, we looked at Revelation 15 and 16 last night, talking about getting towards the final judgment of all those. And one of the things that I brought up to them is these judgments have not started yet. And so we all still have the opportunity to follow Christ and to warn our family members and our friends about the coming judgment too, because Jesus is our source of salvation. Guys, it's more than strategic that we're talking about this passage this Sunday. So don't get lost in it. Guys, I love y'all. Can't wait to see you on Sunday. We'll talk to you later. Bye.